Alrighty, we're back. It is a new day, and we are almost to the part of putting it all together. At this point, what we're going to do is insert the zipper into the lining. There was an alternate version where if it was a solid piece of lining, it would be a metallic snap, but the version that we picked is going to be a zipper. I did that because I thought maybe the top would be less floppy. I've chosen to use antique brass hardware, and I'm also going to use a couple of rivets to anchor the straps, but I have made a decision to use the brick cork fabric instead of wax canvas for my straps. Wax canvas would be fine. I felt like the brick color would be a better choice. But the other reason is it's going to be a little bit more durable and a little more soft on my shoulders, and since this is a larger bag, I think that's the way I should go. I'm also going to use some antique brass rivets to anchor the bag right here. We can kind of move this out of the way, and the piping that comes next. I'll just leave that here. So first things first. So you're basically going to have the zipper face up towards the inside, because if you think of the bag, this is the inside of your lining with the pocket right here, and you want your zipper in between these two pieces with the pocket. You kind of have to think in 3D when you're putting this stuff together. So if I sandwich face it with the zipper face down and I put this on, when you flip it open, the bottom side of the zipper would be facing up. We don't want that. So we're going to do this way, and we're going to face right sides together, put that together, and then that way when we flip it open, the top part of the zipper will be face up. I'm going to skip over this because it's me rereading instructions several times in a row, but basically it's asking me to sew a 1/4 inch from the raw edge, but the ends of my zipper are a 1/2 inch from the raw edge, leaving kind of a gap. I'm trying to figure that out. On the back side of the pattern here in this picture, you probably can't see it in camera, but there is a small gap on either side of the zipper, it looks like, so it's supposed to have a gap. My guess is that I'm supposed to be using a handbag zipper, and I'm not. I'm using a nylon coil metal finish zipper. That's what I normally use. So I'm going to have to figure a way to end the zipper. My guess is I'm going to need to make some tabs, which I'll walk you through. But it does not call for tabs. It does not specify which zipper I'm supposed to use. So I had to kind of figure this part out on my own. You can either make tabs, you can get locking zipper ends that are hardware you would purchase, or you would get a specific handbag zipper. I'll probably end up making tabs because I didn't have any of those and I wasn't prepared. Now, I don't figure out that I need tabs until I've already sewed up the ends of the zipper. I'll just let you know right now. But one piece of advice, make sure you put the zipper slider on before you sew on any kind of tabs or sew up your zipper. It'll make your life easier. I have made that mistake before. So just make sure that you put the slider on. It doesn't really matter which direction, although you can, visualize that if you have a front of the bag and you prefer it to open a certain way. Just make sure that you're keeping that in mind for when you're placing the slider onto the zipper and then placing the zipper into the lining. If you're right-handed, if you're left-handed, sometimes that does make a difference. What I'm doing right here is I actually had a zipper tab cut from another pattern from Noodlehead that I was working with in this cobalt blue. So I'm just cutting the same shape and size as the one I already have made. And then as I'm kind of trying to figure out how big I want it, I realize I need a little bit bigger opening, so I end up making it to where it's like a 1/2 inch tab instead of a 1 inch tab. I hope that makes sense. Now we'll just sew the lining and the zipper together as we discussed before. I like to close the zipper most of the way up, place the clips up to the slider, and then open it a little bit. You can also use 1/4-inch Wonder Tape if you want to adhere it to a piece and you don't want the zipper to move while you're sewing. That's another alternative. I do that a lot with cork. Alright, so here's one side of the lining. Normally I would top stitch the zipper. However, after kind of playing with it and finger pressing the zipper and the back side, I decide that to do so I would be fighting against it. It's wanting to lay down instead of towards the top of the bag. So I'm not going to top stitch this, I'm just going to leave it. The other reason is that after finger pressing all this out and then putting the other side of the lining next to it, it's basically going to stick the zipper in place, where the whole point of top stitching is to keep fabric out of the way so it doesn't get zipped up into the zipper once you're done catching all your fabric. In this case it won't. So I am just going to trim the tabs. I'm going to pink this edge to keep it from any kind of fraying it might have that would get stuck inside the lining in the exterior. And then I am going to sandwich the other side of the lining to it. If you don't have a pinking rotary cutter, I highly recommend it. It's probably one of my favorite things. Now we need to go to the other side of the lining. We're doing the same thing, but we need to put it this way. So, kind of the same concept. I can pull this back out. I will be putting the right side face up and then sandwiching so that when it folds open, it's perfect. Hope that makes sense as I say it out loud. So again, you'll want it to, my thought process on this is to go ahead and line it where it would be when we finish it. I'm going to put a few clips here so that the seams are correct together, that you know, it rounds in the same way. You can even fold that in if you want to, and that the middle's in the middle, like this. So now I'm kind of lined up where I need to be. So here is our lining, with this being the interior of the bag with the zipper face down. And then on the other side, the zipper face up and the top of the bag. And when it's open, you'll have access to your 2 pockets. At this point, if you decide that you want a smaller interior slip pocket or something for your pen, or you want to break them up in a different way, this will be the last opportunity that you have to sew lines and do that. I don't know why we didn't do it in the first place, but if you choose to do that, now's the time. Otherwise, I'm really loving how the tabs look with the lining and the zipper. You will have a little gap on either side right here. And I assume that you could shorten the zipper if you want that to be even more pronounced. You could probably do a couple of different modifications on this. Going back to my handy dandy guide here, looks like we're on the putting it all together portion, which is great. We're on the home stretch right now. The next part we need to tackle is adding piping to the top raw edge of the exterior pieces, both of them. I've shown you one way to attach your piping to your exterior pieces, just, you know, clipping them to the raw edge, then you can baste it and then attach it to the lining. The other way to do this would be to sandwich it all together at once, which you can totally do. The problem I did run into, one was reading too far ahead of myself and into the next step, which, you know, included how to attach the exterior piece to the lining. It confused me a little bit, but I finally figured it out. And it was just, I couldn't picture it laying flat, I guess, in my head. When I flip this inside out and I push the corners out, I noticed that I did not get very close to the piping, at least not as close as I would prefer and what I think the bag is supposed to look like. So I go ahead and do the other side, but in the end what happens is I go back and I get it closer, as close as I can, and it required me, because of the machine that I use, to kind of manually hold it as close as I can to the needle, and that worked just fine. But be aware that you do need to get your stitch super duper close to the piping. You want it as close as you can get it without going through it. Okay, so yeah, I got like 1/8 of an inch closer to the piping. That made a huge difference. I think Jen Box is right on the money here. You need to take as much time as you need and go as slowly as you need to around these curves and get it as close as possible to the piping. It will make the bag look better. They want these corners here to be pushed towards the lining, which I'm taking my time figuring out. And so in other words, they want it to lay just like this when you sew the lining and the exterior together. We also want to make sure that the piping meets exactly on the sides, that the seams are all lined up. They also want a 5-inch opening, which is pretty much the size of your interior pocket. So you're going to open that up to birth your bag later on. And the instructions call for the box corners to be pointed towards the center of each side, so we'll set that up and clip them in place. Make sure that your zipper is open all the way though before you clip the entire circumference of your bag and start sewing that all together. That way you're able to birth the bag once you're done doing that. It was then that she knew she messed up. because while trying to sew the bag together, when she hit double layers of piping, wax canvas, and cork, she ended up breaking 4 needles and had to switch machines. I had to wait a couple of days for reinforcements, so here seems like a good place to go ahead and stop the video, but we will bring it back when we do straps and put everything together.